All right, cool. So in here, this is kind of our schedule for today. So we're going to review AP style questions, and we're also going to review the AP exam in general. We're going to talk a little bit more about for each loops we talked about from last class. We're going to do an AP style question that actually took longer than I thought it would. And then we're going to start/continue. Maybe I'll put that there. Start/continue. Our student group's little mini project. So if you click into this document here, review APCS style questions. I am having really slow internet apparently. All right, so typical AP exam, 3 hours long. There are 40 multiple choice questions, 4 free response questions typically. All right, so generally speaking, you usually have about 22 minutes per free response question. Oh my gosh, this is like a struggle here. For today, I'm sorry, for this year, they, as you guys may have heard, they've updated the AP questions. So basically, what we have is we have a total of 45 minutes for the entire exam. All right, there will be 0 multiple choice questions. The entire thing is just, I believe, 2 free response questions. So that might be good or bad depending on who you are. As far as the free response questions go, they've also changed some of the topics, as Minjay was alluding to a little bit, and we'll talk about those in a minute. One other change is that the AP exam is actually an open note exam this year. All right, so that might be something that sounds like, it's like, oh, sweet, I can use my notes. Honestly, that's not going to be helpful at all. I think it will be helpful to actually make a note sheet, but using like your entire curriculum's worth of notes is not going to be helpful. The reasoning for that is you only have 45 minutes, so you're not going to really have time to actually look stuff up. I'm going to actually mute everyone because, let's see, manage participants.
Can we use references on?
Sorry, go ahead, Suhas. I just muted you. Go ahead.
Can we use references online for stuff during the AP exam?
You can literally look up whatever you want. I believe you are required to only be you. That would make sense, as in like you can't have your tutor take your AP exam for you. But otherwise, I think literally everything is fair game. Yeah. Cool. So that's kind of like big picture wise what the AP exam is going to look like. Oh, go ahead.
Is it gonna like? I'm just like, is it gonna? Where would we like? We would just be typing it onto.
I don't know the answer to that. They're going to give a lot more information on April 3rd. So in a few days here, AP is going to release a whole bunch of stuff. This is as much as we know for now. So as far as the AP free response questions, typically there's 4 questions. Well, there's always 4 questions. Typically there's 1 class rating question, 1 algorithm question, 1, and it's typically with 1D arrays, 1, and maybe classes, 1 string question, and then 1 2D array question. So in terms of changes on the exam, there is no recursion. Maybe I'll just literally write this on here. Removed from exam. Or maybe not on the exam. Recursion, not on the exam. 2D arrays, not on the exam. Inheritance, not on the exam in any form, right? So that means that in addition to there not being interfaces, there's actually no superclass subclass relationships at all, right? So classes will still be on the exam, but interfaces and superclass stuff will not be at all. Let me spell that, right? Recursion not on there. We haven't even started talking about that yet. And 2D arrays not on there at all, but you'll note that there will be 1D array style questions that could work like a 2D array. So in terms of what the actual AP exam is probably going to cover, it's probably going to have a class rating question. I would say there's about a 90% chance of that, I would guess. And then there will probably be some sort of algorithm question that'll probably involve strings. That would be my guess, right? So we're going to kind of focus a little bit more on that going forward, but we're still going to kind of cover the rest of the curriculum. I would say at the end of the day, as I was saying a minute ago, all of this stuff is still stuff you need to know. It's really just not being tested in the AP exam. So it's still part of any intro to programming class, which is basically what this course is. So I figure we might as well actually cover all the stuff. Are there any questions about any of that? Or any other questions about any of that?
So technically, haven't we learned almost everything that's going to be on the exam?
Yes, we have basically learned everything
Okay.
on the exam.
Okay.
Yep.
And so just okay, so because the AP exam is going to be done like this because of the coronavirus and stuff. Regardless if we go back to school or not, this is how the test is going to be.
Regardless of whether or not we go back to school, this is how the test is going to be. So I don't know if you have updates. Some U.S. schools have already canceled in-person class for the rest of the year. So yeah, it's a done deal.
So if we do go back to, okay, I don't know if you know this, but if we go back to class, like at school, will we get the test at school as well? And then we can search stuff up at school?
I don't know the answer to that. I would guess probably yes, but I don't know. It's a good question. It's definitely being set up such that one could take it at home. But I don't think it's a requirement as far as I know.
If we have any summoned before the end of the year, will it be this format or will it be MCQs as well?
Yeah, so somebody was asking about this last block about mock exams and stuff like that. I'm guessing we're probably not going to have the 3-hour mock exam that we were planning on having. I've already written it, so that's a little bit frustrating, but that's fine. I'm sure you guys aren't super unhappy that you're not going to be taking a 3-hour exam. If you are, well, me too. So there's that. So basically, I will predict that it's going to change. I think our mock exam will be like the actual AP exam. That only seems fair. That's the point of these mock exams. But I'll give you a more complete answer to that eventually. Yeah, good question. Any other questions about going forward stuff? That's pretty much as much information as I have.
If the AP exam is only going to consist of 2 FRQs, then won't the curve be really, really strict?
Probably. Yep. Yeah, that's a good observation. I think so. I don't know though. We'll see. I mean, there's one of two ways this can go, right? It can either be that they give higher scores than normal, which I don't think they want to do, or the curve will be strict, which I'm guessing it's more likely to be that one. Yep. I mean, I will say that there's 2 free response questions is, in my opinion, probably enough to give people a 135 score. If you can solve 2 FRQs in 45 minutes, yeah, good, right? I think the bubble will be a little bit more dicey of like 3s versus 4s, but I don't think if you should have gotten a 5, I don't think you'll get a 3. If you should have gotten a 2, I don't think you'll get a 4. So I think it'll be mostly right. Yeah. All right, we're gonna move on. So we're gonna talk a bit about for each loops. Let's see if I can make this little bar go away. Maybe no is the answer to that. All right, so I'm just gonna quickly recap what these are for. Right.
One last question.
Oh yeah, hit it.
Okay, so if it's on our laptop and it's open note, does that mean we can like put it in JGrasp and check if it works?
I don't know.
That be
I'm guessing
okay.
no. I'm guessing it's gonna
Okay.
be in paper note and you'll be doing a lockdown browser.
Okay.
But that might be wrong because apparently people can take it on their cell phone. So no idea. But I predict.
I think the College Board said that you could take it on any online device,
Right.
but I could be wrong.
So I don't know. We'll see. Maybe. Actually, probably yes, to be honest, now that I'm thinking about it, MJ. But I don't know the answer to that. All right, so jumping back over here. So on this, our unit schedule here, right, I'm jumping into the second one here. There were some specifically weird questions about for each loops. I actually investigated, someone might know the answer to this more than me on one of these questions because I got one wrong this morning, first period. So generally speaking, for each loop, the goal is to iterate over a data structure, right? The reason why you would use one is because it's easier from a syntax standpoint sometimes, right? So here's an example of building a 1D array of strings, right? So we have Dwayne, Chris, and LeBron, our lovely members of the Heat, AKA the Heatles, right? So the first time through this loop, right, stir would get assigned to index 0, in this case, Dwayne. The second time through, stir would get assigned to Chris. The third time through, stir will get assigned to LeBron. Right, you'll note that if I had changed some syntax up here and made it larger, this thing would still iterate over the whole thing. Right, so there's nothing that has to do with the length of the array or anything. It just automatically goes one at a time through the whole thing. All right, are there any questions on syntax of a for each loop? Cool, a couple other examples. All right, you can have logic in there. We've already seen that last time. All right, you can also for each loop over an array list. That will work. This is not an example of that, but you can for each loop over an array list if you'd like. Cool, scrolling down here. A couple people asked this question last time, so I'm just gonna talk about it. Cool, what do you mean you can't change anything in an array or array list inside of a for each loop? Can I change anything? All right, so, oh, I think I might have just answered my own question. Well, I don't know, we'll see. So, example number 1. All right, we have this lovely int array. Maybe I'll just change them a little bit to 8, 12. Great, so first time through, z is the first element, which would be 2. Right, so it would increase z from 2 to 3, and then z would go up, right? So the local variable z would go up, and then we would print again, right? So it would actually increase to 3. Right, I'm gonna actually grab this code. Oh shoot, I had JS open a minute ago. I was just gonna actually show this in the debugger just to show what happens here. So this is changing my examples as we're going, which is not recommended as a teacher, but I had a question about this last time, so I figured might as well change it. 2, 3, 8, 9, 12, 13. All right, so going in here, if I paste all this code in, all right, we can see it's the same code. I'm gonna run this on debug mode. So we can see over here, here's my array, right? If we take it and drag it out, you can actually see all the elements, right? So the first time through, z is equal to 2, right? You'll note that this is a copy of this, right? So we print out the 2, we print out z, right? We increase z to 3. You'll note that my array has not changed, right? So we print out 3. So what's actually gonna get printed is the number followed by the number after it, right? So it will print 2, 8, 9. The next time through, it will print 12 and 13, but the array is not actually changing. Right? Are there any questions on that one? Cool. I'm gonna skip the second example because I'm just gonna go like this. Ready? Cool. Skip. Example 3. All right. So here's another example. Right? We have this lovely string array. Right? It has high and there in the 2 indices. Right? When we for each loop over, what we're doing is we're substringing here. Actually, I'm just going to grab this example down here. So the first time through, we are calling substring on 1. Just to recap, this goes from index 1 all the way to the end. Right, so here's my array. Right, you can see we are substringing there, right? So we're going to actually update z, right? Z is going to be an I, right? So z just changed on this line, and then the I gets printed right there. You'll note that over here, my array has not changed, right? So it's going to print I followed by here, right? Like caveman speak, right? I here, right? Then down here, it's going to print hi there the next time through. Right, so you can change the local variables, you cannot change the actual array. All right, we're going to see one more complicated example in a second here. Any questions on this one? I think this one's also relatively straightforward. Sweet. Example 3. You can change the instance variables of a class. All right, so here's a class. Just take a moment, look over that real quick. All right, so we have this holder class. It's got a private instance variable named number. It's got a constructor to initialize its instance variable. It's got a method to actually change the number, and then it's got a toString. All right, cool. Going down here. All right, here's our lovely array. All right, maybe I'll just grab this stuff. All right, so towards the bottom on here, you can see this is the same class as above. So here's my array. You'll note that on here, we're really looking at the toString of the objects, right? So I can actually go in and grab the specific objects if I want. Right, so there's index 0, that's this guy. Right, so what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna step one time, right? We can see we're calling z.changeNumber, right? So the array itself is not gonna change, but we can change its instance variables. All right, so I'm gonna actually use this button right here. I don't know if you guys use that very often. What this does is this goes into a method, right? So if I click that, you can see I'm now down here, right? Its current new num is equal to 3. I'm sorry, its current num is 5, right? Because I initialized it up here, right? It is going to actually update, right? So you can see over here, this changed to -3, that changed to -3, that changed to -3, right? So you can actually change the instance variables of an object. You just can't change the actual object itself.
Mr. Redwick,
Yep.
if if the number variable is public, could you direct reference change it?
Yep. We won't ever deal with public instance variables in this course, but yes.
Okay.
Yep, good question. Any other questions about this example? Sweet, moving on. Cool, all right, going back to our schedule over here. All right, here is a free response question. All right, I'm gonna open up this PDF here real quick. In fact, actually, yeah, here's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna recap how I would read a free response question because I don't think we've actually done this yet. So this lovely document has a whole bunch of information in it. All right, some of it is relevant, much of it is repeat information. Okay, so this is how I would actually read this thing. All right, I would read this opening line. All right, digital sounds can be represented as an array of integer values. For this question, you will write 2 unrelated methods of the sound class. Right, you can see unrelated, that probably means that they're not calling each other. Right, cool, we have an instance variable, it's an array of ints. We have a method here, limit amplitude, and we have a method here, trim silence from beginning. There is other information here, I'm not going to read it. All right, down here, next page, right? I do read this whole section here, and then the next information is really just an example, right? So you don't actually need to read it, right? So the volume of a sound depends on the amplitude of each value in the sound. The amplitude of a value is its absolute value. For example, an amplitude of 2300 is 2300, and the amplitude of 4000 is 4000. Great. Write the method limit amplitude that will change any value that has an amplitude greater than the given limit. Values that are greater than the limit are replaced with limit, and values that are less than negative limit are replaced with negative limit. The method returns the total number of values that were changed in the array. Great, so that right there is all I actually need to read from here to here, right? If you already feel like you know how to answer the question, great, answer it, right? If you feel like you still need more information, this section here is basically an example, right? But you don't want to actually code just for that example. You want to code for all of them, right? Down here, these are usually helpful, right? Read the preconditions, but that's it on that, right? Going on to part B. Actually, I'm maybe just gonna, you'll do the equivalent for part B, right? So again, you'll read the intro part. If you feel like you have enough information, just move on. If you feel like you need to actually read an example, then you read this one here. Are there any questions on how I actually read these problems? Great, going back to the unit schedule over here, right? There's an example called runnable code. What I have you guys do is click that. All right, this is gonna bring you to an online editor, online Java writing tool. It's called Replit, REPL.IT. Right, and what this is gonna do is it's basically, there's gonna be two files in here once this thing actually loads. Right, the first one's gonna be the main one. That's gonna be basically where all the test cases live. The second one is gonna be sound.java, right? And the sound.java is literally this class right here. Right, so what you're gonna need to do is you're gonna need to actually write what the, you guys, is anyone else that would actually open this? Oh, here we go. Right, so all you guys need to do is open up sound.java and write the two methods in here. Right, that's it. Right, once you've successfully written them, what you're gonna do is click the run button and it'll actually run your code. And then basically go from there. So what we're gonna do is I'm gonna give you guys about 22 minutes or so. All right, we've already kind of read a chunk of the question. We're gonna start going over this at 2:45, we'll say. No, 2:35. And then move on from there. Some of you will not be done. All right, I'm aware of that, but just do your best, right? This will be able to actually automatically test your code. If you need hints, I created this other document with some hints. I also created another document which has some pseudocode, right? So I would first try it by yourself for a couple minutes. If you need hints, open up the hints, right? Try that by yourself. And then if you actually need pseudocode, I would open that up. Good luck, happy working.
Where do we find the document with FRQ? Is the document is it in the share with students? Is the FRQ the description in Drive or where?
It's this thing right here. Just go here. You'll find the PDF. So it's that guy right there.
Whatever's less, you can't use a for each loop, right? You just use, right? Okay.
Mr. Redwick,
Yo.
the runnable thing, it's not loading the runnable code.
Really?
I mean, it's stuck on like, it loads a little bit and then it just stops.
Try refreshing.
Yeah, I did.
what? Can you share your screen? Sorry, everybody else, while we debug this.
The host disabled attendees screen sharing.
Try again. Try refreshing. Try opening in a different browser.
Oh, okay. Cool.
Yep.
Oh, okay. It's not working again. Should I just write it in JGrasp?
Can.
Okay.
I'm gonna send you the main method code. All right, Enrique, there you go.
Can you only run it when you're done with both? Because I feel like it's not.
You can run part one. It'll just fail part two. I think, right?
Wait, by running it, you're just checking for errors, right? There's no actual like driver code, right?
No, it actually runs it. If you look in the main class, it's building a whole bunch of random test cases.
What do we do after we're done with the FRQ?
I would look at that student groups project. Alternatively, feel free to try the CCC problems from this week's class.
Mr. Rudwick, I don't understand like my error right now.
Mr. Roderick, what time did we start listening? Is the time limit over?
Oh, sorry, Jay. I'm just seeing this. Uh, yeah, folks, feel free to private message me if you have questions. All right, folks, we're going to start going over the solution in about 30 seconds. What I would like you to do is send me a private message on how many more minutes do you need. It could be 0, which would mean you're done, right? Or something other than 0, which means you're not done. Just shoot me a private message. How many more minutes would you need? Cool. Got a number of messages, not from everybody. Great. One other comment while you guys are sending those in. I realize that you might not have gotten a perfect solution. That's okay, right? We don't need to get perfect solutions to get a decent number of points on here, right? You can still get, well, at least in previous years, I'm assuming that's still the case this year. I believe you should still be able to get a 5 on this exam without getting every single point, right? So I wouldn't stress too much on that. The goal is to come up with a at least relatively complete solution. Yeah, all right, we're gonna go over this. All right, so this is the scoring guide from 2011. 2 general comments about this. Number 1, this scoring guide has something that they have since gotten rid of, which is half points. So you can see Part A and Part B both have half points associated with them, right? Additionally, the answer key is going to use the this keyword a lot. You do not need that. All right, so I'm just going to recap. I'm just going to go through the answer on solution A. So here's our general solution, right? We create a variable that is going to be counting the number of times we find something that's wrong. We loop over the entire array. We check and see, is it too small, right? So you don't need the this dot. So is samples I less than negative limit, right? If it is, then you update it to negative limit and you increase this variable up here. Right, same general logic for positive numbers. If sample is greater than limit, update samples to limit, increase the number change by 1. Right, at the very end, we need to return the variable that we counted. Right, so relatively succinct solution. Right, are there any questions about the solution?
I didn't know you could do negative limit, so I did just limit times negative 1. Would that work as well?
Go ahead.
I did limit times negative 1 instead of negative limit because I didn't know you could do that. Would that work?
I actually didn't know I could do this until I saw the solution. I also did negative 1 times limit. That is totally,
Okay.
Yep. Good question. Great, we're gonna look at the points on this one. So the points are basically broken down into 2 sections. All right, these sections up here are for updating the array. These sections up here are for the count, right? So up here, right, there's 1 point for considering elements and samples. So basically, did you actually access elements and samples? So a half point for accessing many elements, a half point for accessing every single element with no bounds errors. So if you wrote a loop that accessed every single element, you got that point, right? There's 2 points for identifying elements and samples, a half point for comparing one element with limit, a half point for changing at least one element to limit or negative limit, and 1 point for successfully changing all of them to plus or minus limit appropriately, right? So you could basically do a whole bunch of junk and still get 2 out of these 3 points, right? Obviously, all the actual hard stuff is in this point here. Right, down here for counting, all right, there's a 1 point for successfully initializing and updating a counter to achieve the correct number and change samples, right? So you note that if you incorrectly count, you do not get that point. And then a half point for returning your updated counter. You'll note that even if you incorrectly count, as long as you return your counter variable, you can still get that. So you can get 2 out of these 4.5 points pretty easily without doing a whole bunch of correct stuff. Obviously, it's more work to actually get all 4.5. What questions do you have about these points? And I'd like you to actually, even if you didn't finish your question, I would like you to actually go through and just see how you did. So just give yourself a little unofficial score.
Do you want us to message you our score?
Sorry?
Do you want us to message you our score?
Can, sure. Yeah, that'd be great at the end. Just at the end. All right, so going back to part 2, I'm just gonna reread this section here real quick. Where's the question?
Wait, as long as there's no errors when you run it, do you get full marks or no?
As long as it'll say you passed all the test cases when you run it.
So if I pass all of them,
then your thing is perfect. You get 9 out of 9.
Okay.
Yep. All right, I'm just going to recap part 2. Maybe we'll just look at a solution. So you want to basically remove all the zeros from the front. right? So the first thing you need to do is figure out how many zeros there actually are, right? So this solution here, right? What this does is this basically counts how many zeros there are. So as long as the first element is 0, we increase, right? So let's say there's 3 zeros in the front, right? The first time we'd be accessing element 0. If that were 0, we increase by 1. Second time we find a 0, we increase, or we keep increasing. Once we find something that's not 0, this loop's going to quit, and I is basically going to have counted however many times we found a 0, right? So that's going to be the total number of zeros at the front. Using that, what we're going to do is we're going to build a new array, right? We want the length to be the same as the old length minus however many zeros there are, right? So if there were 3 zeros in the front, the new array we want it to be 3 less than the original. Then what we're going to do is we're going to basically loop over this array, right? So we can loop over either samples.length, or you can do a slightly mathematical loop, but that's how many times we want to loop, right? So we want to, each time through, access the correct element in samples, right? So the first time j is 0, so in index 0 of new samples, we're going to stick that first non-zero element. So if we found 3 zeros, right, that's going to be updated to 3 there. Second time through, right, this would be 1, this would be 4. Third time through, this would be 2, this would be 5, and so on and so on, right? So we're basically like shoving everything over into this new array, right? Finally, we need to actually update samples to be new samples, right? So that's gonna actually assign those things. Questions on this solution? I'll leave it up here for a moment. And again, you do not need this keyword at all. Right, it doesn't need to be in your code, not a once. 0 times is fine. Cool, in terms of this solution, it's kind of broken down into 3 parts. There's 1.5 points for finding how many zeros are there. Right, so did you access every leading 0 in samples? You'll note that you can do that in a variety of ways, but did you actually access all those elements? There's 1 for did you compare 0 and 1 element in samples, and there's 1 for did you do it in a loop. All right, down here, create an array of the proper length, right? So that involves actually successfully doing this up here, right? So did you successfully do that? And then down here, did you copy some values, right? That's a half point. Did you copy all of them correctly? That's a whole point. And then did you update your instance variable? So that very last line, right? This one down here, samples equals new samples. All right, so that's where that grading rubric comes from. What questions do you guys have on part B? Cool. I saw some folks message some stuff. What I'd like is just a little score update from you. I'm not writing this down at all. I just want a little like, where should we spend more time on stuff, right? So I would like from everyone an unofficial score. You can either break it down into both parts or just give me an overall one. Either one's good. All right, so give me a score out of 9, right? So it'll be like 2 out of 9 or 7 out of 9. Right, some of you guys didn't finish. If you're in that boat, that really just means we need more practice, right? So that's why we're doing these things. As far as homework goes, there is a bit of homework, right? As Mr. Lee said, we are going to keep with a similar workload. It's just hard to do everything face-to-face the whole time, right? So what we're going to do is on your, I realize I'm slightly over, but we'll be done in a minute or so here. So on this student groups document, what I would like you to do is simply write the student class. So it's the first chunk here. It's roughly the first page and a half. It should not be, well, it's basically write 2 methods, right? So one is this compare to, and the other is this toString, right? Those are the only things you actually need to write. If you have questions, feel free to ask them over email. That'd be great. If you have questions overall right now, feel free to stay in the chat. I'll stick around for a few minutes. Otherwise, that's it. Deuces, have a lovely day. I will see you guys on Thursday. Thanks, guys. I'm unmuting everyone because I miss hearing your voices. I don't even know how you're gonna all leave before then, but bye, guys. I'd love to hear.
All right, bye.
Thank you.
Thank
Mr.
you.
Rodwick.
Bye.
Thank you, Mr. Rodwick.
Thank you, Mr. Rodwick.
Thank you.
Thank
you. Mr. Rudwick,
Yo,
wasn't there a summative we did before we
there was.
had like, did we get those back, like the
Nope.
grade in Power School? Okay.
I have not put them in Power School because I haven't graded them yet.
Okay.
So I'll do that.
Oh, okay.
soon. I just haven't done it yet.
Technically, would they not go in Power School until we would see them in person?
I'm probably just gonna put them in Power School before. That's my plan.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
I just the only thing is there's another 10 people that haven't taken it yet,
Oh.
so
Okay.
they haven't been in school. So all right, dude.
Okay.
Take it easy.
Bye. Thank you.
Yep.